Centre 33. Thank you for that. Completely forgot to record it. And I'm here today with my colleague Jenny. Would you like to say a quick hello?
Hello everyone, my name's Jenny and I'm just here today to kind of admit everyone and let them in as they come in, and then I'll be here to answer any questions that come up towards the end of today's webinar.
Thank you. So let's begin with an overview of what we'll be covering today. So here's an overview of what we'll be talking about today. So to start, we'll do a short section around housekeeping. We will then talk about what anxiety is and how it can affect us, and also what causes anxiety. Next, there'll be a section on coping strategies, and finally, some signposting. The presentation should hopefully last around half an hour. We will also have a Q&A through the chat box at the end for around 15 minutes, making today around 45 minutes long. So it should be done around 6:15. Okay, so just a couple of things to mention before we get started. It is really important to ensure everyone's confidentiality and anonymity and have this as a safe space. So if we keep all cameras and microphones turned off, please, that would be great. We ask you, please, not to record or screenshot the talk. Recording will be made available on our website and our YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks, so you can rewatch there. Also, you may want a pen and paper to hand to make any notes of what I'm about to talk about today. So when we come to the Q&A section at the end, we will turn on the chat function and you can write any questions you have there, and only me and Jenny will be able to see them. Because it won't be available until the end, you might want to write down any questions you have as we go along today. And lastly, our confidentiality policy is that anything you share with Centre 33 will stay within Centre 33 unless we feel there's a risk of harm to yourself or someone else. If that was the case, we might need to share information externally with other people that could help. So if anyone did share something in the chat that concerned us, we would get in touch with you individually to follow this up. And we would explain if we needed to contact other services to get you or someone else any support you needed. So, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a very natural human emotion and an evolutionary safety response designed to protect us from threat or danger. It is also known as the fight, flight, freeze response. A bit of a tongue twister. But there's a video which we have which explains it really well, so I'm just going to put that on for you now to watch. So I'm going to stop sharing and put that on now.
Humans, like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react, leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects. At Tanky Boxing, you can learn both bottom-up and top-down techniques to reduce false FFF activation and bring your body back to balance.
Just going to get the PowerPoint back up. So I hope that the video was useful. I think it explains it really, really well. And yeah, so yeah, again, you can watch it whenever you like on YouTube, just to give yourself a reminder of the FFF response, because it is a massive concept in anxiety in general. Another way of thinking about anxiety can also be described as a fraction. So on the right hand side of the slide here, our perception of threat over our feeling of being able to cope is like the equation. So what is often the case for people who have anxiety is they have increased perception of threat and a decreased feeling of being able to cope. And what we do when helping someone to manage and reduce anxiety is to change those arrows around. So as you'll have seen in the video, anxiety isn't always bad, and we do need this FFF response and a certain level of anxiety in order to protect us from real dangers. For example, if we're in the middle of a crossing road and a car suddenly swerves around the corner, it's our anxiety or FFF response that causes us to jump backwards onto the pavement and stay safe. However, for some people, this FFF response might be triggered at times when there isn't a real threat or danger, when the danger isn't as bad as our minds think it is. This is when anxiety can become more unhelpful and problematic. One way of thinking about anxiety is liken it to a faulty smoke alarm going off in the kitchen when the toaster is burnt, rather than when there's an actual fire. If your smoke alarm is going off like this, if you've been feeling this way for a long time, the anxiety is really intense and is affecting your ability to do things. And it is really important to speak to someone about how you're feeling and to get some support. A couple of tips that it can be helpful to remind yourself that these feelings will go away as if it's not possible for our body to stay in this heightened state for very long. And that, as unpleasant these feelings are, they are designed to keep you safe. But again, they're not going to last forever. So, anxiety can affect us in a number of different ways. One area it often affects is our thoughts, and it can cause us to develop certain ways of thinking about things. Some common thought patterns are to dwell on things that have happened in the past and worry or ruminate about what we did or didn't do, or to focus on things in the future and worry about what might happen, predicting that something bad is going to happen. Anxiety can also make us feel less confident and are able to cope in situations. On the screen here are some quite common worries, such as, what if I mess up on my first day? They'll think I'm stupid and useless and will fire me. And what if I fail my exam? I'll ruin my future and I'll never get a good job. Have a think about whatever you can to relate to any of these, or whether there are any other types of thoughts that you might have. Anxiety can also affect the way we feel. Some of the emotions quite commonly associated with anxiety include feeling worried, nervous, panicky, scared, or stressed. It it can also bring about other emotions, such as feeling sad, hopeless, unsettled, overwhelmed, or angry. Again, have a think about how anxiety makes you feel. One of the first steps to managing anxiety is to recognize how and when we experience it. Anxiety can also be about physical changes in our bodies, as mentioned in the video. It can make us feel shaky or make us feel sweaty, and it can make us feel sick. It can also give us a tight chest or racing heart. It might also make our breathing more shallower. It can cause us to have headaches, feel dizzy or lightheaded, and can make us feel tired. Perhaps less associated with anxiety, it can also make us difficult to concentrate or focus on things and difficult to remember things. Lastly, anxiety can affect how we behave. As mentioned in the video, two of the most common ways in which anxiety can affect behaviours is by causing people to escape or avoid situations or places that make them feel anxious. This is something my colleague is going to talk about in the second part of our talk next week about how to overcome anxiety. Anxiety can also cause people to develop certain coping mechanisms, such as only doing things at quiet times of the day, over-rehearsing things, crossing the street to keep away from people, avoiding eye contact, or constantly checking for signs of danger. Anxiety can also affect daily routines, such as causing people to eat more or less than usual, often less as, we don't feel hungry when we're anxious, or to sleep more or less than usual, often less again if we find a week because, we want to stay awake at night and we're worrying. It can be useful to be aware of any ways that anxiety is affecting your behaviour, as we'll come on to in a moment, as it can help us to work out how to reduce anxiety in the long run. What we'd like to explain on this slide is how these thoughts, feelings and behaviours we've just talked through can impact one another and can develop into an unhelpful cycle of anxiety. So this fictional person has an event coming up where they're going to meet new people. If they have thoughts about going to this event, such as I'm rubbish and making good first impressions, their brains misinterpret the situation as a threat. Therefore, their FFF response, or anxiety response, is activated, bringing on unpleasant feelings and emotions, such as being nervous and jittery. After having these worries and thoughts and unpleasant feelings, it can then affect their behaviour. So it may cause them to keep to themselves all day, and avoid making eye contact. My colleague is going to be talking more about this next week again, about this unhelpful cycle, and the things that can keep anxiety going. So we're now going to think briefly about what causes anxiety. It's important to say at this point that there isn't just one thing that causes it. Anxiety often develops as a result of a number of different factors. And on the screen here, we have 4 of the most common factors identified by research: biological factors, traumatic or stressful life events, learning from others, and our social environment. So, our biology or genetics can play a part in the development of anxiety. There isn't a specific gene for anxiety, but people may be born with certain characteristics which make them more likely to develop anxiety. For example, characteristics such as being more cautious, shy, or sensitive. One way to know whether biology might be playing a part for you is to think about whether you have had any or do have any characteristics like this, or were anxious as a young child or a baby, or even thinking about whether your biological parents also have some form of anxiety. Experiencing traumatic or stressful life events can impact on how we feel, potentially causing us to feel worried, scared, or anxious. It might be an event you've experienced recently that's triggered anxiety, or it might be an event in the past which is a more delayed impact. It might also be a result of prolonged stressful situations over a long period of time, rather than just one singular event. So much of what we learn growing up comes from those around us. If we grow up around people who themselves are anxious, we might pick up on certain ways of thinking or responding to things which we then learn ourselves. Perhaps someone in your family is a warrior and worried a lot in front of you or avoids doing certain things. And perhaps someone in your family has certain phobias which you've developed. Finally, there might be things going on in or around our social environment which we find scary, stressful, or worrying. This can include being bullied at school, problems at home, trouble in our communities, or alarming stories on the news. It's really understandable if these things have an impact on how you feel. They may well contribute to someone developing more ongoing anxiety. If you would find it helpful to understand more about what causes you to develop anxiety, have a bit of a think about these four areas. Maybe even write them down now and have a little jot down of things that you think. As I said, though, they aren't the only possible causes, but they are some of the most common ones. So, what can we do to manage anxiety in the moment? So now we're going to share a few strategies with you that hopefully can help. Practicing calming exercises can help to reduce anxious feelings or worries. The first exercise is called rectangle breathing, and it can be particularly helpful if you're feeling quite panicky or overwhelmed, or if you experience symptoms with rapid, shallow breathing. It helps by slowing down and regulating your breathing back to a comfortable pace. So the first thing to do is to breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 3, breathe out again for 5, and then hold for 3 again. I do this until you feel that your breathing is under control again and back to a normal regulated pace. Moreover, a couple of tips for doing this activity is to place a hand on your chest and stomach to help focus your mind. And if you're experiencing panic attacks, trying to breathe out for slightly longer than you breathe in is shown to help. Grounding exercises can also help to manage anxiety. Grounding is all about refocusing your attention back into the present moment and onto external things around you. This can be helpful for taking your mind off overwhelming thoughts about the past and future or uncomfortable physical feelings. There are different types of grounding exercises. The first one at the top of the page is called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 activity. And this involves looking around and identifying 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Looking at the bottom right-hand side of the slide now, other activities you could try include looking around, spotting things that start with each letter of the alphabet, things that are a certain shape, like triangles and circles, or a certain colour. It might also help to ground you by asking yourself factual questions like, what's my name? What is today's date? Where am I? And what can I see in the room around me? These exercises might take some time to have an effect, so we always suggest people practice them first at times when they aren't feeling anxious. Then they should be easy to recall and have more of a helpful effect when needed. There are lots of other calming activities which might help as well, such as meditation, yoga, writing, and playing with a pet. It's all about finding what works for you. You may already know what helps or what doesn't, but if you're not sure, have a go at trying some of these activities. It can be good to build up a toolkit of different things that you can try in the moment. You may find it helpful to write a list of these different activities in your notebook or on your phone as a reminder to yourself. And also some people like making a set of coping cards to carry around with them, and you can get quite creative with these. So as we talked about already, the things we say to ourselves can have a big impact on how we feel, what we're able to do in situations. Just as thinking anxious or negative things can make us feel worried or unsure, thinking positive things can help us to feel more confident and able to take on new challenges. Think about what phrases might help you feel more able to cope in anxious situations. maybe some of the phrases on this slide would help. Maybe there are things that you already say to yourself. Keep a list of these things, add them to your coping cards or your phone or your notebook, and tell them to yourself in times when you need that little confidence boost. If you need further support with your mental health, we would encourage you to reach out to someone, whether it's a trusted adult in your family or community, or one of the people on the organisations on the slide here. So obviously there's your GP, which is a great one to get in contact with. COOF, which is online mental health information, tips and support. Young Minds have a lot of information and advice specifically about young people's mental health, and also BEAT, who support around eating problems and eating disorders. But there's loads of support out there if you're willing to look for it. And yeah, of course, you can reach out to us at Centre 33 for support, whether it's a one-off chat about something as and when you need it, or for more ongoing support. We can help you with a range of things, including mental health, housing, employment, money, sexual health, and we have a young carers team. You can contact us Monday to Friday, 12 to 5 p.m, or Saturdays, 10 to 1, or leave a message outside of these times. You can call, text, WhatsApp, or email. We've also reopened our drop-ins in our Ely, Cambridge, and Wisbech hubs. Check out our website for locations and the latest opening times, please. Thanks again, and have a nice rest of the evening.